Hi, Mish here, and for those who tuned into the Cleco 47 live stream, one thing that Fox pointed out, he had never fired a German HK G36. So, now that we're out here kind of shooting for New Year's, thought I'd bring mine out. I don't think he's ever held one. Let him handle it, and then give it a go. For those who haven't been following for a while, this gun of mine is a semi-automatic only. The third position is only cosmetic. It is an HK receiver that was redone by Michael's Machines. This is the original HK barrel and parts. And yeah, not only is this just a gun I'm really happy I own, it's one that just comes out to the range a lot because to me it's a lot of fun to shoot. And when I share it with people, they do seem to really enjoy it as well. But now let's toss it over to Fox. He's never handled this before, much less shot one, like I said. Get his very first impressions. All right, first time that's in your hands. What, 30-second impression.
It's very different, but also familiar. It's kind of a good way to, I guess maybe the bottom, the MP5 feel is very familiar down here. And despite what these handguards look like out here, it's not too bad to hold on to. But also, it just feels different. Everything about it. Maybe a little hollow.
What do you think of that charging handle?
You know what? I haven't even touched it, so I'm assuming it's got to follow. You would think I'd at least watch videos on these, but okay, now you're starting to step into where some quality's coming in. You can feel it in that trigger. Oh yeah. Man, that charging handle is effortless. But still just a very different feel of a firearm. I've never felt anything quite like it. MP5 feel down here, I do like the stock. I don't know, man. It's very, very light. I mean, this is the lightest gun I've ever held that is this size.
And for those who don't know, that is the basically 19-inch barrel, the full-length version, and that's the full-length buttstock on her. And of course, that's the classic dual optic. So guys, we're gonna toss him some ammo and get to that. But first, if you could, please like, share, subscribe, and check us out over on Patreon. When it comes to the G36, I've often said it has very simple, very intuitive controls. And I think you saw that. He picked up on it very quickly with the AK style release. And as he pointed out, the kind of MP-esque Navy style lower. He's maybe the first person I've met, though, that didn't want to play with the charging handle much. But I did notice he picked up on the fact that you can lock it open like this. To be exact, this is an 18.9-inch barrel with removable hider. Overall length is about 39.3 inches with the stock deployed, full size. And with it folded in, it's under 30 inches. And this dual optic. On the bottom we have a 3-power scope meant for optimal shooting at 200 meters, although it can go out to 800. And on top we have an old school red dot, 1 power, calibrated for 100 meters. It has fiber optic for daytime use, plus a battery backup for low light or night use. And this whole unit was made by Hensoldt, which is part of Zeiss. And this is a very light gun. It is all plastic, pretty much. With this optic on, remember it is 2 units, it's right at 8 pounds with the full-length barrel. The thing is, if you go to the version like the G36V or E, the weight drops to just over 7 pounds for the full length. And if you go to the K and the C, it gets even lighter. Just wanted to point that out. And, here are where I stuck my mags. Where did I stick my mags? I don't know. Why aren't you telling me, guys? There they are. Standard mags for these. 30 rounds, translucent. They look very similar to Swiss 5.5.0s, but they are not interchangeable. In fact, they're a little bit inspired by the HK take on the AK-74 of all things. Okay, enough with the bullshit talk, as Rob would say. Let's let Fox pull the trigger. Except it wasn't charged. That would have been cooler if it was, right? Oh well. First rounds, Fox through the G36.
Held open.
Very consistent brass ejection. No surprise, Fox enjoyed it. He likes the MP5. Maybe that's why he didn't find the trigger bad. To be fair, this isn't the worst G36 trigger on this gun that I've ever felt, but it is a plastic trigger, which has pros and cons. Certainly in the heat and the cold, not a bad thing. And he picked up on the controls quite easily. One thing he was a little, not struggling with, but had to get used to was the mags. And they are kind of interesting. They're not exactly direct in or rock and lock. They're kind of this hybrid. Anyone who has a MP5 or even G3 kind of knows the deal. And I know this gun has been featured on the channel many times, but what really is nice is same old guns, but sharing them with new people because they pick up on new things, which is actually why earlier in 2022, I also brought it out and let J-Ro give it a gander. Now I'll let J-Ro try the G36.
You can really feel that hold open on this one. It's real obvious.
Yeah, not a bad thing. So yeah, he thought it was a very smooth, nice gun, which is a little interesting because he is more of a traditionalist. As anyone who's kind of followed knows, he's more into 1911s. What he was talking about on the magazine here, this does lock open on an empty, and because so much of the mass is in the bolt group, the only other really weighty part of the gun is the barrel itself. You do feel it. It's not unpleasant or jarring, but you can definitely tell that the bolt is not going forward. Now, there is not a release. So you have to pull your mag out and then tap your handle. Then it goes forward. But that's kind of how the G3 was before. And a lot of European guns, especially from the 90s when this was adopted. Now, interestingly, there is a manual hold open here for safety, cleaning, stuff like that. Pull it back, press up in this. Sorry, guys. A little cumbersome, but you get the idea. And it will stay open there. Now, there are controls and things you can get that will kind of add that feature. You can even pop off this mag well and put on a Stanag adapter. Very modular gun, as you'd expect from HK and the G36. With that, Fox shot it, J-Ro shot it. Even though I've had this gun a number of years, I still really enjoy shooting it. Alrighty, let's reacquaint myself with this old gun. Previous to last year, I had a 1.5 power optic, which is the export version up here, because it's a lot lighter. So I wasn't sure how I would take with the dual optic, but I think the cool factor outweighs. And I was also not sure about this stock before I had the G36C, the shorter stock, on, because I'm not a tall individual. But I wanted to put the full-size stock on for authenticity's sake, and just to see how I liked it. Now notice you can clearly fire through this very long ejection port with the stock folded over, so that's nice. And it latches to the side. It's just held on to this block that acts as a brass deflector. And it locks in very tight back here. And it has a nice, relatively sticky rubber butt pad. And I'm happy to report that even with the longer stock on, I don't at all find that uncomfortable. I think in part because of the grip. Also in part, kind of like Fox pointed out, these handguards, they don't look like they would be comfy, but they're not bad. With that though, here's our light bipod that sometimes lives on this gun and other times doesn't. Let's put it on for a minute. Like previous HKs, it just goes on very easily. Little button here and a kind of grenade style pull pin. It's a lot lighter than previous HK forearm bipods because it is almost all polymer, but since this is a much lighter gun, that's alright. This is more for defensive or maybe to be used as an LMG, which actually kind of led the gun into some trouble later on, we'll see. But it is a neat accessory to have. But again, we are adding weight, and it is a bit of a shame because one of the charms of this gun is how light it can be and still have very gentle recoil thanks to the short stroke gas piston and the multi-lug rotating bolt. You start adding the bipod, the dual optic, especially if you go to a railed handguard. It does get heavy, but considering how much crap is already on it, the fact that it is under 9 pounds, not too shabby. This barrel is, of course, from HK, cold hammer forged, chrome lined, 1-in-7 twist, which should deliver good accuracy. And this optic, like I said, the top is meant for 100 meters, and the bottom is meant for 200 and out. Now, I can't really tell you much about optics, but earlier in 2022, I did ask J-Ro his input, and this is what he had to say. Now J-Bro is going to try out the dual optic. So what'd you think of the West German, or rather German, dual optic?
I like it. I'm gonna go down range and take it some. I mean, I wasn't shooting off a bench or anything, but it's real easy to pick up. Switching from one to the other, pretty simple. Optics, the red dot's real clear in it. That's super easy to pick up because if you're looking anywhere through it, you're gonna see it. It's not like the PS90 or something where you kind of have to have your head at the right angle for it. But yeah, I like it. I like the fact that the mag seat real clean and easy. There's no question about whether everything's in battery and whatever. And like I was saying earlier, the hold open on it is super obvious.
Yeah.
You feel the difference in the weight of the movement of the bolt so much that you don't even have to keep going to know that you're empty. It tells you.
Yeah, it's a pretty massive bolt carrier group, so, heavier than an AR. So, yeah, you're going to definitely feel it, especially with that polymer chassis.
And, one thing obviously to watch out for is this reciprocating handle. But that may actually be also why they started going to this system where the charging handle doesn't stay locked out in one position or the other. Mm-hmm. Because it came from a model that was reciprocating, even though once they went to a non-reciprocating, I think they just kind of stuck with that. As I would prefer it actually be able to lock into one position or the other.
You can,
but
you when you have it out, you can pull it in.
Okay.
But of course, when it goes forward, it goes back forward.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
With a reciprocating system, I would never want one that stays out. But for a non-reciprocating, it's just easier to get a hold of it.
But that is reciprocating.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to lock this one out, but
yeah.
Yeah, I like it. It's clean.
It looks so cool on this little bipod, even to me. Please understand that, much like with Fox, I tossed J-Ro this gun and he had no experience with it. The G36 is a bit of a sleeper. People know the G3, the MP5. This one's less well known, so... And especially when someone puts you on the spot on camera like that, when you don't have time to really collect your thoughts, guys, it is difficult, and I think we understand what he was trying to say. He doesn't, he had a hard time grasping the handle, and I can understand that. Of course, the flip side is it's fully ambidextrous, and it reciprocating back and forth. It's not going to get in the way or hit anything. It also can easily be used as a forward assist or silent closure, very European of them. The whole thing is very slick and clean, which is really part of its charm. It's a very stripped down gun. As has often been repeated, this was not meant to be a revolutionary step forward. It was meant to be an evolutionary jump from the G3 and the AK from West and East Germany as they reunited, because the Bundeswehr just didn't have a lot of funding in the 1990s. With that, let's talk a bit about where the G36 is today, and then we'll revisit the range and wrap things up. As I know you know, in the 80s, HK was working on the radically advanced, or at least different, G11. But with problems and unification of West and East Germany, this changed. The budget was severely down post-Cold War, and so it was canceled. For the new rifle, they had to do something. West Germany was using the G3, something they adopted back in 1959, and East Germany was using variants of the AK in both 7.62 by 39 and 5.45. Not really acceptable. First, HK proposed a variant of its HK-33, the G41, basically the same gun, just took Stanag mags. No, they didn't want that. And so, around 93, 94, 95, the Bundeswehr outlined what it wanted. And that really included cheaper than the G3, and they needed better accuracy, better controllability, and automatic, which kind of denoted using 5.56 NATO. They didn't outright say it, but that's what they really meant. They wanted the weight to be as light as possible, not much over 3 kilograms. They wanted good accuracy out to at least 200 meters, 500 max. They wanted ambidextrous controls because they finally decided that lefties were not evil. And it really just cost point. They specified they wanted a very conventional gun, not a bullpup, nothing extraordinary. They wanted it to be very modular, so barrels and things could be swapped out, so it could be a submachine gun sized, all the way up to a light machine gun sized. And on. That gives you a general idea. So cost and weight. And this was meant to be more or less a defensive gun because Germany at this point wasn't doing anything globally. So we're thinking of a European theater just to defend the country. HK came out with the HK50, and it was trialed against Steyer's AUG A2 in 95, 96. A few other guns were looked at. It was adopted in 1997 with an initial order of 33,000, quickly upped to 50,000, and the very first so-called Gewehr 36s were received in mid to late 1997, and so they were ready just in time for Germany's participation in Kosovo, which was quite historic because that was the first time Germany really put force outside of its borders in many years. And at first, the G36 performed quite well in the European theater, but then 2001 happened and the War on Terror, and Germany, of course, sent troops to Afghanistan. And for the first decade, if there were issues, they were kept under wraps or quiet. Then around April of 2012, they kind of exploded onto the scene, and an ongoing controversy began. I don't want this to be a huge video, neither do you, so I'm going to hit the high points. Pun intended, maybe, because this is also plastic. It was said that the gun would overheat during rapid fire, and that would decrease accuracy. The idea was, once it was hot after several burst or sustained firefights, past 100 meters, it was difficult to hit targets. Past 200 meters, it was next to impossible, and past 300 meters, it was impossible. So short-term solution, commanders in the field ordered their troops to kind of let their guns rest and only fire in short bursts and let them cool off and just not get engaged in firefights of duration. But this would spur an investigation in 2013, and evidence would start to come out in 2014. One of the first things in 2014, it was in February, it was said that the gun itself did not have a fault, that rather one of the contractors for 5.56 NATO ammo that Germany was using was making bullets, cartridges, with overly thin casings, walls, jackets, and this was leading to overheating issues, friction issues, what have you. Some accepted this, including the manufacturer themselves. Others, though, pointed out that the G36 had had issues with lack of range, lack of accuracy, lack of effective penetration, going back to 2010 and even before that, pretty much since it started going in to other theaters besides Germany. This led the Ministry of Defense and others to do studies, yada, yada, yada. And actually in June of that year, the Bundeswehr, Germany, put a halt to purchasing any new guns. Although, to be fair, they pretty much had all they needed except for attrition replacements. Then, in 2015, more reports came out. The defense minister claimed that the problems were primarily because of the G36's weight savings features, i.e., heavy use of plastics in the receiver. True, the steel barrel is mounted to a steel front trunnion, but that's mounted inside a receiver. Now, the receiver has metal struts and supports. It's not, just plastic, but it could shift around. And so between March and April, blame was kind of cast at HK for the G36. Various reports claimed that soldiers had less than 50% of them trusted the gun to some degree. Accuracy was claimed to be under 10% when it heated up over about 80, 90 degrees, so shot quite a bit. And so the defense minister basically said, we're not doing it anymore. We're no longer issuing a plastic rifle that can't hit the broadside of a barn, and we're just not doing it. We're gonna do something new. We're gonna tender a new gun. We want a new gun. Okay. In 2016 or thereabouts, the German government sued HK, saying that they needed to fix the roughly 167,000 G36s still in government possession. They had ordered over 176,000, but some had been given away. Some have been lost to attrition. Some have been gone to testing, other things. They wanted HK to fix this. Well, this went to the German courts, and the courts ruled in HK's favor, throwing out the suit, saying that no, HK didn't have to fix them because they made the guns exactly to the Bundeswehr, Germany's specifications. They're the ones that specified the lighter weight and the cost measures and all that. So they made the rifle they wanted. Also, many have pointed out, including Chris Bartacci, that this gun was made for defense use in Europe, not use in Afghanistan or Iraq. Not saying it shouldn't work there, just saying that wasn't really what it was made for, and it was made very much at a time when the Bundeswehr had next to no funding. Nevertheless, the writing was on the wall, and the new Sturmgewehr program for the Bundeswehr was started 2016, some sources say early 2017. This was to select a new rifle to replace the G36. Its days were numbered. The plan was to have this out of service by roughly 2020. But you know what they say about plans. But to liven things up, one thing Fox wanted to do was kind of do some light movement with this gun, because it is quite balanced and handy. See how it pointed, all that. And so, since we had a little extra time that day, we did. In February 2017, the SSB program was officially announced, and then in April, the exact specifications were announced. Keep in mind, although they were not buying new G36s, plenty of these, along with the K model, were in service and still doing things. Anyway, the plan was to begin testing in the summer of that year and run it through around November of 2018. Then from December through April of 2019, they would deliberate, analyze, ask questions. You know, it's winter. What are you going to do? And then announce the winner in May of 2019. And then an advanced round of field trials, testing, refinements would begin the summer of 2019. That would run through the summer of 2020, giving it a full year to try in different environments. And then the winner was to be announced. But yeah, well, I should say not announced. It was to be announced in 2019, but they were supposed to start receiving guns. I should have said that. Sorry. I've been talking a bit. That was the plan. And at first, in 2017, things were going to it. In fact, 5 companies initially presented proposals that met the specifications of the SSB. Probably not surprisingly, Belgium, FN Herstal, submitted the Scar Light, or at least a variant of it. On top of that, Sig Sauer submitted a variant of the MCX. Now, from this point, it gets a little more interesting. A conglomeration of Steyr Rheinmetall submitted what was known as the RS556. Keep in mind that Rheinmetall, back in the 60s, actually made G3s for the West German military. So there was that. And then, of course, we have the famous Hanel Mark 556. Hanel, while a German company, was actually owned, still is as far as I know, by UAE citizens and conglomerate. And they had actually had some former engineers from HK working with them. And that brings us to HK. And you might be wondering why not the HK 416. Well, the government felt it was too expensive for mass issuance, but they didn't hate it. In fact, GSG-9 had been using the 416A5 for a number of years, and more recently the KSK, German Special Forces, had acquired roughly 1,700 416A7s at the time, the newest variant. So it wasn't that they hated the 416, they just didn't think they had it in the budget, because they were looking to purchase up to 120,000 rifles. So what HK did, they kind of trimmed some fat and worked some things around to make it better for mass production, and came up with the HK 433. So those are our 5 participants as we move into 2018. The first to drop out was the consortium of Steyr Rheinmetall, citing economic reasons, probably not having the production capacity, what have you. Next, Sig Sauer drops out, taking the MCX with them, citing unforeseen technical issues, tactical issues with the requirements. They also cited ITAR from the USA. Keep in mind that the factory in Germany, Sig Sauer, was going away, so yeah. And then finally, FN Herstal drops out. We don't know why, although we can probably guess. Leaving the Hanel Mark 556 and the HK 433 to power on through the end of 2018 and enter deliberations in 2019. But for various reasons, parts of the trials had to be redone. This delayed things until 2020. But finally, in September, that's why I had that flub earlier, sorry, the Hanel was declared the winner, and the process began to place orders. It wouldn't last long, though. The Germans, a very litigious people, they would sue, or at least there were definitely allegations that the Mark 556 violated patents held by Heckler & Koch. Keep in mind, people who had once worked on the 416 went to work for, well, the UAE and the kind of extension handle on the 816. And yeah, if you look at them, yeah, there are improvements, but it's pretty clear. On top of that, the nominally independent authority for trials for commissions in Germany reevaluated the bid from Hanel and basically said it wasn't such a good deal after all, that it would actually cost more money to buy the Mark 556, and that HK was maybe a better candidate. Keep in mind that HK had been supplying rifles to them since 1959, although to be fair to Hanel, they did supply several RS-9 sniper rifles to the Bundeswehr in the 21st century, so they were not an unknown. But yeah, because of all this hullabaloo controversy in October of 2020, the contract was suspended and eventually canceled. So, what's going to replace the G36? Keep in mind, it's still soldiering on. Here we are entering into 2021, and it was supposedly going to be replaced years earlier. Funny how it still seems to be working fine, but I digress. G36 with the dual optic. Held open. In March of that year, HK was announced as the winner. But not the 433. Nope, the 416. To be specific, the 416A8, the latest version, which was in a lot of ways, for example, the pistol grip, the stock, customized to meet the needs of the Bundeswehr. It's almost as if that's kind of what they wanted all along, but they had to find a way to get the money for it. But of course, Hanel would sue or countersue or whatever, and so this, again, held up the process as we get into the middle of 2021, and nothing can happen. No guns can be bought, meaning the Bundeswehr is still using the G36. So for over a year, as the case made its way through the courts, nothing much happened. Although there is the G36A2. It's been around for several years. They got rid of the dual optic, going to a newer reflex. They got rid of the polymer handguard, going to metal rails. They went to a newer style buttstock, sometimes just the G36C style, yada yada yada. Also a newer pattern of bayonet. But I digress. So there were some updates done, even though I have mine set up pretty much as original 1990 era gun. They did change them a bit, but there's only so much they can do or wanted to do because funding. Finally, in June, the High Court of Dusseldorf, which is just fun to say, dismissed Hanel's case, allowing the German government and Heckler & Koch to proceed. So trials continued for the 416A8 to be adopted as the Gewehr 95, specifically the G95A1, which will have a 16.5-inch barrel, and the G95KA1 carbine with a 14-inch barrel. At least that's what we think right now. These are very similar to HK416, as you'd imagine, because it's just an updated variant, which itself is basically a gas piston, short piston-driven version of a M4 carbine. So, better or worse, that's what they're basically getting. Probably better, but hey. A little heavier though, at about 3.5 kilograms without an optic. So you're going to be weighing a little more. But I digress. In December of 2022, the first contract was inked, which gave funding to purchase just under 14,000 95A1 rifles and just over 3,000 95 KA1 carbines. I've been talking for a while though. You're probably getting bored. And at this point in the range day, it's getting late. So I thought I might put the last little mag through my trusty old gun before it goes back in the safe for another couple of months. Let's do that, and then we'll wrap this thing up. I might as well come back to her. Held up. So, we're entering into the beginning of 2023. The plan is to purchase around 118,000 rifles and carbines. The first order will cover basically the 18,000. That plus the guns already acquired for field trials and all that, around 1,000. That leaves a balance of 100,000 rifles. The plan, beginning next year, 2024, is every year up until 2029 is HK's to deliver 20,000 firearms, G35A1s, to the Bundeswehr, getting to the total. And this is still, well, not this is still in service, I should say, in 2023. The G36 is still trucking. Over 25 years after it was adopted. I don't think that's a bad record, considering it was an interim solution, really, and a bit of a rush job. What do you think? What do you think about the issues? Were they overblown? Do you think it was too much to ask to rapid fire this in a more offensive combat situation in heat and high altitudes? Or do you think NHK should just be able to take it? I'm honestly not sure what I think either, because it got so political and has been so political for over a decade. It's kind of hard to parse out the truth. And it's probably a gun-by-gun basis. Maybe some batches were better than others. I remember reading years ago there was speculation that certain polymer batches weren't as rigid or heat-resistant as others. Earlier guns might have been better than later. I don't know. There's a lot of speculation going on, even today. But it does seem like there was a bit of a political axe to grind where they wanted to get rid of the G36 for various reasons. And I think that was evident that they may kind of wanted to switch away from HK for a while because they didn't want the 416, and even with the 433, it didn't pass. They really went with the handle, kind of a newcomer, but it didn't work out for various reasons. And over the years, governments changed, opinions changed, and we're kind of back to the 416 and the Gewehr 95. But we'll see how next year goes, 2024, if it begins to enter service. And if it does, it will still take at least a decade to get the Gewehr 36 out, because they won't have enough up until 2026, 27 at the earliest, and they're going to have to retrain troops and armorers, and funding and all that. Lots could happen, as you've seen. Handle was the winner, then it wasn't. Back in the day, it was the ammo that was to blame for the accuracy, then it was the gun, then who knows, because the courts, I don't know. This is a really interesting gun. It's a lot of fun to shoot. Mechanically, it's an AR-18 style piston system with a lot of HK and other elements, even like the stock from the SIG. Even though this optic is kind of laughably dated now, hey, for 1996 when it was created, it's pretty darn advanced, let's be honest. At least it was forward-thinking. And the gun, they did their best to future-proof it by making it so modular. Even the barrels remove very easily, kind of like an AR. I think it did its job. Obviously, it served fine as defending Germany. And, I don't know, politics and combat. But it's a gun I really like. What do you think? As always, if you could, please do like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to help support the channel, check out the link to the Patreon page. Guys, I bring this gun out and like guns like it. It's not a flex, as some have jokingly said. It's because I enjoy sharing, both with my friends, Fox, who's my cousin, and J-Ro, someone I've known for over 20 years. And because A lot of people don't have some, and I just want to share. To me, that's what's fun about this, is sharing a passion, sharing a hobby. And this has been one of the most enjoyable guns. It's reliable. I don't have to worry about what ammo I feed it. And I can hand it to someone with basically no training on how to use it, and they'll figure it out real quick. It is a very good conscript type rifle. It's just simple in the right ways. But it, still has HK quality, as Fox pointed out at the beginning of this video. And as J-Ro pointed out, he actually likes the dual optic. I get that. He's an older school person, kind of used to the older types of red dots, not all the newfangled things. But even Fox didn't hate it. In fact, he had very few complaints about it. He seemed to really enjoy it, which means it'll probably come out again. It's just we were shooting on New Year's, so time was a little bit limited. But anyway, hope everyone is having a good beginning to their year. Please do comment below. We can talk about the oh-so-colorful history of the G36 and its attempted replacement, something that's been going on for a lot of years, since like 2015, and probably will still be going on as it hits the decade mark. It's also worth pointing out that Spain, Saudi Arabia both use these in large numbers. In fact, roughly 30 nations have used the gun in some capacity, including some police departments in the USA. It definitely seems like for a certain role, it does very well. But, as with a lot of guns, kind of like the original M4, when you put a gun in a position it wasn't designed for, built for, made for, don't be shocked if it doesn't give you the performance you're looking for. This is Misha, and also on behalf of Fox and J-Ro, we'll all catch you several times in 2023.